Where did you dial in at?
Ron.
I can get you here.
Okay.
You're the host now.
Okay.
So you can share the screen.
I'll introduce you.
You share it.
Okay, let me know when you're recording, Doug, and I'll introduce Raj. Ron Kraft, do you want to say anything first?
We are recording.
I just want to say thank you, and Ron, thanks for introducing Raj here in a few minutes. It's been it's been a great endeavor thus far. We've only cracked the surface, and there's been a number of people that have had various experiences in long-range strategic planning, but there's been a lot of give and take and open mind, and anybody that hasn't learned from each other in this process has missed the boat. It's been absolutely my pleasure to spend the time that I've been afforded, both in pre-retreat work with Raj and Ron, and then the course of the weekend. And I look forward to the opportunity to continue to work with both of them as well as the remainder of the committee. We have some unfinished business in regards to our belief statements that at our first review, we'll try to culminate that. But with that being said, Ron, you've known Raj for a lot longer than I've had the privilege. So if you would give that gentleman his due, and then he's got some things that he would like to share with us all. So thank you.
Good. So Raj Varadarajan is a senior partner with the Boston Consulting Group. The Boston Consulting Group is about, actually in 2019, it was an $8.5 billion business. I started the business when it was $100 million, so it's grown a lot in the last 35 years. Raj has spent a significant amount of time, and I appreciate him doing this pro bono. He spent a significant amount of time reviewing all of the notes from our interviews. He reviewed all of the surveys. He looked at all the financials, and he's done a tremendous job prior to the retreat in getting to know the situation. He facilitated the retreat. It was a great set of conversations. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Raj and let him present. Let me bring the deck up. Can you all see that?
Yep.
So first of all, good evening, everybody, and thank you very, very much for this opportunity. It's indeed a great honor to spend the time with you all today. I thought I'll just start off with some starting thoughts and overall remarks and my feelings and my experience. It was an absolutely outstanding couple of days. I spent some time, I'll get into the process and what we did in just a second, but what I gathered in the few days that I had with all of which I didn't just hear, but I experienced from hearing all the members in the room and the people of the committee talk about it. You're not just a club, you're an enduring institution. You're an institution that has lasted more than 100 years, and it's not just a piece of land. It's not the 35,000 acres. I know you'll talk a lot about the 35,000 acres, but it is, and it's not just the people, because you talk about the people, but what everybody experiences and takes away from it. And I was in tears a couple of times. Was you're the soul of a lot of families over multiple generations, and I can't say that enough. I can't thank you all enough for giving me the chance to experience something like this. I'm a city boy, have lived in cities all my life, so this has been a great honor for me. One of the things we discussed, just to underscore how special this is I asked the team at the retreat a question about how, the Dow Jones Industrial Index was set up in 1896. And the question I had was, how many of the original Dow are still on the Dow 136 years later? I won't go around, since there's only a couple of extra people, and cold call people and ask and embarrass anybody, but the right answer is exactly zero. As of maybe 2 years ago, there was one company on the original Dow that still was on the Dow, and that was General Electric, GE, which is my alma mater. But essentially, to have something last 100 plus years is a very, very, very special thing. And in fact, one of my colleagues at BCG and I have talked a lot and done a lot of research precisely on what makes institutions last. So it isn't an accident that you've endured for 100 years, and you're thinking about the next 100 in your long-term, planning. You have a unique glue. This was talked about a lot. You have a unique glue that has made this happen. Your love for nature, the spirit of volunteerism, which I didn't quite understand at the beginning on the first day when you talked about it, but through the course of my multiple hours, I began to understand how much time, energy, passion, and how much of themselves people give to keeping this institution. And you've been evolving your processes as you grew, and it's great to see that you're continuing that evolution and you're trying to get your all your bylaws and all of your things together. So I think that's terrific that you're trying to professionalize your processes as you grow. Perhaps the most important thing of all that struck me was the multi-generational passion that the memories that people have generate. I heard so many people there talk about being here 3, 4, 5 generations, which again is something I'm not used to seeing. So you have something very, very special. You know it, but I just wanted to underscore that you're not just a club, you're a unique source of the most precious memories that span generations. And I think that's, and for some families, you're the heirloom that is passed on from one generation to the next. It's fantastic. So looking ahead, I think this board and the next have the unique responsibility and privilege of shaping the next 100 years. So thank you very much for this opportunity for me to be on this, a little piece of this journey with you. I wanted to talk a little bit about the process that we undertook so that all the people who were not there can understand what we did. We met over 2 sessions. We met on Friday between 6 and 9 p.m. This was an initial meeting of the entire committee, which is to discuss their beliefs, the vision, to set up the context for the long-range plan, if you will. We discussed a lot of the beliefs of the members because there was a pretty substantial and a very well done survey. I thought I'll give you all kudos for that. Very well done survey of over 150 plus pages of stuff that I had gone through and the members all had. So we talked about some of those beliefs over there a little bit, helped shape the vision. Then on Saturday we met and from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. to discuss, debate, and align on some of the key goals. So given this vision, given your wants, needs, desires, wishes, given a financial current situation, which I think Jean did a really good job of laying out, what is it that this committee needs to focus on in terms of how do you break up this phenomenal task of laying out plans for the next 100 years, if you will, into the immediate goals, like what are the action teams that you will think of? So the goal of these 2 days was quite explicitly not to problem solve. In my professional experience, it's very ineffective to start with an answer. There's many, many opinions, there's many ideas, there's lots of creativity, and harnessing that precisely is the goal of trying to do something like this. And it's great that you had such a large group of people with very diverse ideas in there. So the main goal was, you want to involve the individuals, and the goal was basically to review some great analysis. So there was lots of data and analysis. As I said, we had membership surveys, board interviews, committee surveys. We then get a shared understanding of the needs, wants, and wishes of these constituencies, all of them. The interesting thing from all of my reading and my presence was that there's a lot of convergence. So it is not like, it's a diversity of opinions, but whether you take the membership, whether you take the board, whether you take the committee, it's the same set of diverse opinions, if you will. So you can pretty much bucket them into the 3, 4, 5 things that people want. We then wanted to discuss and internalize the current financial position. So you may have all you want, you may want a lot, but where are you and how does that position you? And based on this foundation, the goal was to identify what are the subset of key areas and a goal for each of these key areas that then the committee members could then divide themselves into and break up into smaller groups, go actively recruit some of the new members, because one of the important things everyone talked about is how to engage the membership and how to engage especially some of the newer members so that you can begin to create the next multi-generation set of memories, if you will. So how do you get them engaged on this? I found it to be very energizing and energizing set of discussions. As Ron said, I cannot thank all the people enough. They spent a heck of a lot of time, and every minute of the time, everybody was engaged. It's very hard for everybody to be in a session where people are that engaged. You usually lose people, but I must say this was one of those rare occasions where everybody was fully engaged all the time. There was a lot of common ground, and the members efficiently helped me shape the key goal areas that everybody agrees are critical. They all very quickly joined the subgroups that they were each very passionate about. And then they all agreed on a review process that gives every member the chance chance for exposure to everybody else's goals also and comment on it. So that's what you should see coming to you. So what are we going to talk about? I'm going to talk a little bit about the beliefs that shape the vision. I'm going to go through the couple of days as we did. So as I said, on day one, we talked about the beliefs, talked about the vision. We talked about a proposed modification to the HSC vision. So I'm going to put that out here for the board to debate at the right time, whenever your right processes allow, and to approve. We talked a little bit about a brief review of the financial starting point. That has not yet gone through the finance committee fully. So I'm just going to present like a couple of numbers from there, just to give you all a
Thank you.
The official numbers will come from the finance committee. We then agreed on, based on all of the vision and the financial starting point, what are the 5 goal areas and goal statements? And I'll talk about what those 5 areas and goal statements are that the long range planning committee signed up for further work. And then we get into the next steps here. So when I did my pre-work and I read through pages and pages and pages of beliefs and a lot of Excel survey and an Excel spreadsheet with a lot of survey results of the committee members, I found at least 4 key themes to the beliefs that kind of make the soul of this organization. There were a lot of things around protecting nature, about the 35,000 acre gem that you want to be stewards of, and how you need to believe in sustainability, how you believe in sustainability, and so on. There were a lot of things about values and purpose, about being either hunting and fishing or being more than hunting and fishing, about the future generation, doing what's right, what's not easy, doing not what's easy, doing all members being equal. There were a set of things about people and expected behaviors, treating members with respect and representing the members and not ourselves in any committee or in any board or anything like that. And there was a lot of things about membership, governance, and financial, about having younger members, having board training, accountability, transparency, etc. The interesting thing was, as we got into the meeting and we went into the discussion of the beliefs of the people, similar things came up. There were things about protecting the nature. You talked about the stewards of natural resources, the talk about need to make it to the next 100 years. We talked about on the values and purpose side, doing what's good for the club, not the individual. You talked about club infrastructure and future generations. Future generations came up a couple of times. And the fact was that the common fabric for everybody is the club. Like, there might be differences in background, but the common fabric is the club, and all members are equal. Then in the people and behavior side, we talked about the different perspectives that people had. You talked about needing people and behavior, needing to get educated, be educated, community, respect, volunteerism, healing the distrust. There was some discussion about how over the last, not this board session, but a couple of iterations, there is some distrust that has been growing. You all probably know about it much more than I would. And there was a lot of desire to say, we have a lot more in common than not, and how do we heal that? And the fact that everybody loves the club, even if they have different views. There was an understanding of that. And then there was a lot of discussion about governance and financial and the beliefs, which is we need to find a way to set us on a path to success. Strategic planning is necessary. We need to have balance, financial stability, needing a plan, transparent instruments, new volunteers, and must ensure that all the work, I think this was what I found most important, was that there have been committees that have done things and proposed it, but then the committee cadence and the board cadence is different. And so how does a committee ensure that when boards change, that the work that the committees do carry through? That was a key point of discussion. So there were a lot of discussions on that belief, which then we said, okay, given all these beliefs, what does this mean for the vision? And what do we think we need to tweak the vision? And here is the first piece of output that the board should look at. On the left-hand side is the Hiawatha Sportsman Club's current vision, if you will. And on the right-hand side is the tighter vision that the committee recommended. The points to note over here is that there are 2 things that are changed up front. First of all, the vision is of the membership. So the members are making this statement. So in some ways, your accountability is being taken on by the members, not just this amorphous institution called the club, but it's all the members of the club. So the Hiawatha Sportsman Club, oh, Ron, I think I'm going to get a apostrophe thing again, because it's going to be, I should be the Hiawatha Sportsman's Club's membership commits to conservation of natural resources. So there was the left side, if you see, the club's aim is to promote, and that was felt to be a little weak, if you will. And so the membership is committing to the conservation. It's you all commit versus aiming. The third point is you're leading the entire statement with your true asset, the focus on natural resources. So it's you're committing to the conservation of natural resources, good sportsmanship. And then you highlight family, and this is about a multi-generational memories. It came up so much, so the word family has been included into the vision. There was a lot of discussion about some deterioration and maybe in the respectful and the fact how important respectful relationships were to the glue that actually allowed Hiawatha to survive these 100 years. And so the respectful relationships was introduced in there. And then the goal of sustainable stewardship was to basically show a focus on the long term and on financial stability. So the stewardship was also about the financial piece. There was a discussion about whether the word financial stability needed to be in or not, and we settled on the fact that the stewardship would include that. So the new vision, as it's stated right now, is that the Hiawatha Sportsman's Club's membership commits to conservation of natural resources, good sportsmanship, family recreation, and respectful relationships to ensure sustainable stewardship. So that's, I don't know, I guess the right time to discuss this was probably with the full board. So I suspect I won't open it up for discussion. I'll just move on further on this one. That's the first piece of output for the board to look at. Getting into then what the team decided that are the areas in line with the vision and in line with their needs, wants, and wishes, and where the current situation is of the club. There were 5 key goal areas that the team emerged with that there's going to be action teams on. By the way, I've put them left to right. I've called them A, B, C, D, E, but this does not imply any importance. They're all equally critical. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that. The team A is about communication, education, community and with community and memberships. The goal that the team came up with that they're going to push on was they're going to focus on how do you leverage the club's digital and social media tools to educate and communicate with the membership. And I suspect they'll also include the community, the broader community around. But that's the goal of that team. The real driver for a lot of this was that a lot of the membership, if you look at the data, and I encourage the board to go look at all the data and look at the pages and pages of notes that have come from the very, very well done survey, you will notice that there are a lot of people who don't know a lot of things. So they're saying, when you ask questions about some things, they don't know, they're not as informed. So it would be very easy to think when a certain set of people are all communicating with each other and you all know the things that maybe everybody knows it. And it may be that it's on the website, it may be that's in some newsletter, but unless there is an engaging conversation and there is a way and the message is repeated multiple times, some of these messages don't get across. And it's not just important from the messages to get across, but also from an engagement standpoint, to have the new members engage, volunteer. Volunteerism is such an important piece of this, is that I think the work of that particular team is going to be very critical. It's not just, communication and sending out newsletters, if you will, but it's to really engage. The second team is the infrastructure and costs team. Their goal is that I'll just read out the goal is current infrastructure and cost plan will be analyzed and updated by building, house and grounds, finance, and the manager, and then submitted to the Board of Governors prior to September 1 annually for the Board of Governors prioritization for the following year. So they are committing to a goal about putting in place a process that they will do this repeatedly across all of these different constituencies, which should then give the board, I think, very good visibility into this. And then more importantly, frame some very important decisions. One of the things that I'll talk about in just a moment is how there's a multi-year infrastructure investment plan that's for you all, going to come up to you all for discussion, because there's a fork in the road where you all need to figure out how which direction you want to go, and understanding the infrastructure and cost is going to be a very important piece of this. Then knowing that the infrastructure and cost is in a place where if you did want to take some of the moves you wanted to that are being proposed, you would actually not have all the revenues. We have a third revenue team, and the Hiawatha Sportsman's Club will research and develop processes to increase revenue and amounts required to meet and the operational needs and growth of HSC over the course of the next 5 years. So this team is very clearly given the task of saying, okay, how do you get more revenue, and be very creative about this. One of the things that was really important was, how do you do this without harming the soul of Hiawatha? So that was an important boundary condition, if you will. So they'll come up with ideas, they'll be very creative, and then filter and try to figure out which ones of these can have any negative consequences and therefore should not be considered. And they'll bring that up to the board for discussion. The fourth theme is about natural resources. This was something that there's tremendous amount of passion about. There's like no disagreement on this one, which is, and the goal for this team is annually, the team will ensure that HSC's natural resources are managed to sustain wildlife, forests and timber, rivers, streams, lakes and ponds, fish population and water quality. So this team will come back with recommendations on what would be needed to ensure that that happens and it improves or maintains the current situation. And the last team, again, a very important team, was on governance. So there were a lot of questions about the need expressed by a lot of people in interviews and surveys, et cetera, to understand more, to know more, but also to learn how to be better board members, and put in place a process that future board members are also well educated about their roles, responsibilities, and the kinds of decisions they need to make. So the goal of this team is HSC will develop holistic recommendations to ensure an effective, transparent, accountable, and collaborative board of governors that acts with integrity. So the idea is that they will look across the entire board process and come up with recommendations to you all to figure out, as you think for the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years, how should you be thinking about the board? How should you be thinking about the future and the people that will follow you? So that's a little bit about the 5 goal areas that the teams will pursue. This is a piece, by the way, and I call it rough financials here. Please, this is not being discussed internally with the finance committee, but these are numbers that I saw, and I pulled only a piece of it out, so I'm not giving you the full details. It's still under finance committee review, it'll come to you. But essentially, the bottom line story here is that if you look at your income after cost of sales, it's about $1.6 million for the, roughly the top row. If we look at your expenses, it's like $1.5 million and going up to 1.6. But this is the expenses that you're doing from operating expense standpoint. If you add to it the 20-year outlook expenses, which is what you need to do to maintain and to the infrastructure and to enhance the infrastructure to survive and go for the next 100 years, if you will, or there's a 20-year outlook here, that's about $400,000 to $400,000 to $500,000. And then there is a series of committee requests for some years. There's a loan repayment for any cabin refurbishments that you need to do. There are several items that I have simplified and taken out, and it'll come to the board. But net, if you look at all of those things that are necessary to do to maintain Hiawatha, at a good level, you are short about $500,000, if you will. And so if you look at the current numbers, then you're short about $400 a member. And that's the plan that the finance committee will tweak and come to you with. And all of the other committees will look at, the revenue team will look at what they can do. The membership teams is going to be looking at how to engage the membership and things of the sort. But that's kind of where the preview of coming attractions, if you will. So you're at a very interesting, fork in the road, if you will, or a decision point. Some parting thoughts. Thank you again for inviting me into your home. This has been, absolutely an amazing time for me. And I'll repeat, you're not a location, you're not a destination, you're a home and a unique source of the most precious memories across 5 generations. That means a lot to me because it's just something I've not seen anywhere. For many families, you're the heirloom. You're not just 35,000 acres, but you're also the people that call it ours and the infrastructure and the natural resources. So it's the intersection of the place and the people. You're a unique institution, and a glue made the first 100 years happen, but it looks to me like the glue is aging, it's tired, it needs a refresh. because the glue is also the people, it's their engagement, it's the way you deal with each other. All of those things needs a refresh. And you got to create. I saw one very interesting thing, which is that about 400 members or so were single generation members. So they were the first. So it looks like you have the seed that you need. If they engage their children and their grandchildren, you have the seed that could then become the next 4 or 5 generations. So you're at a unique juncture. This board and the next couple, you'll need to navigate a turn, and how you navigate that turn will determine whether you're going to invest for the future, and you essentially turn and you find yourself on a runway, and you fly down the runway and you take off and soar. Or if you continue, if you look at the numbers, as at least as I see it, on a $1.6 million revenues, if there's like $500,000 of maintenance that's not happening, the lack of investment will catch up, and you'll slowly kind of lose the magic, if you will, if you imagine a state where all your infrastructure is gone. So that's the decision that's in front of the board. It's not an easy one, but the one thing that gives me a lot of hope is the people that I saw were just phenomenal. Their engagement is phenomenal. Their emotional attachment is phenomenal, and they want to go out and recruit. And I would encourage, Doug and the team. Basically, you all talked about recruiting people in the action team, so please do make sure that all the teams go out and reach out and find the new people and recruit them. You talked about, looking a lot about the governance of the board. I would encourage the board to think hard about not just take yourself out, but then look at the next and the next and the next 10 boards that will come. How would you want them to be, and how do you want to set up the governance for that? So thank you all again very much, and if there's questions, I'm happy to take them.
Raj, you and I had talked about some things. You had done a little bit of research in regards to trying to find comparables, and it's difficult
Yes.
to find comparables, but you had one. Could you share that a little bit with those that are here in online tonight and those that will be listening to this? Can you talk about that just a bit, please?
Yes, after I came and I got my head around what Ron Nichols described the place to me, but it wasn't very clear to me, from descriptions. After I came and experienced it, it gave me a better sense of what might be some comparables and things. So what I looked at, Ron Kraft, was the National Forest Service budgets, and I looked at the National Forest Service, and I haven't done a full-blown analysis, but if you look at the thing that anybody who looks at it in the future will need to know is that, of course, larger and larger properties are going to have lower cost per acre, and smaller properties will have higher. So I'll look for something that was comparable. And at 35,000 acres, you're comparable to Bryce Canyon, which is almost exactly 35,000 acres. And if you look at their budget, they are about 3.65. Costs about $10,000 a day to run the place. About 3.65 million dollars is what it costs there. Now you can imagine that government's more expensive, and you guys can be more efficient, etc. But if you look at that number, the $500,000 that you would add on there will put you at, I think, 2.5, 2.6 or something like that would be the number. So it would be, substantially lower than Bryce Canyon, but it kind of puts it in the ballpark. I also said, let's just take the entire National Forest Service budget and the entire acreage of forest that they're maintaining. And finally, that comes out to almost, about the 2.4, 2.5, the same number that it would come up with if you add this on. So I thought those were interesting benchmarks. And as you dig into those, those numbers are available online, and it might be helpful to the board to look at those.
So I'm always looking for new members now that you've seen the club. Are you interested in becoming a member?
I will definitely be going and talking to my wife about it. The only one problem that Hiawatha has, which is it is so cold. I am like, I can manage, but my wife we'd be like so hard pressed to convince her. So, but Leanne will work on her. So
it warms up for a couple months.
That's what we're going to come. We're going to come in the summer, and then I'll tell her this is how it's going to be all the time. So. No, but it's really amazing though. So I will come back in the summer. It is fantastic. Thank you.
Raj, I can't say thanks enough for everything you've done for us so far. I know you'll continue to be a resource as we have questions. Ron Nickel, thank you so much for introducing Raj to all of us. It's been a tremendous pleasure thus far. We still have a lot of work to do, but I'm still looking for the substitution for the word work because it's more a labor of love than it is work. Maybe that's what we'll call it.
LOL, yeah, the new explanation for LOL. So.
With that being said, Doug, if you want to end the recording and we'll have that. I apologize, Raj, that everybody was not able to